What's up? Welcome to Backend Stuff. I'm Jacob Blitzo, here to help you build tech for the future. Think about scalability, reliability, and cost. If you want to learn how to build scalable, production-ready APIs, hit that subscribe button now. Today, we are going to set up an endpoint. We need one that creates a new account and associates it to a new user object with that account. It will also need to return our JSON web token. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's open up our project Real Deal API. We need to expand the lib directory, and then we'll need to expand the Real Deal API web directory. And then we want to expand controllers, and let's go ahead and open up account controller.ex. You'll see that there is already a create function that takes a connection object and account parameters. So let's modify this one to create our account object, a JSON web token, and a user object that references our account object. We can call multiple functions in a with statement. They get executed in order, so left to right. So right here, you'll see that we have our accounts.create account, and then it returns an account. It's based off of our account struct. All right, so we can just go to the end of this right before that do block and do a comma, and we can hit return. We'll tab it in. We can call multiple functions now in order. So one thing that we're going to have to do, one, we're creating our account. We need an account object. We need to use Guardian to encode and sign our account object once we create it. We don't have to authenticate a brand new account. So we can just go ahead and encode and sign our account and create a token right off the bat. So we can just do this, curly brace, and then we're going to do a atom OK, comma, and then it's going to return a token and the claims, but we don't need access to the claims object, so we're going to put an underscore in front of it, and then go ahead and close off those curly braces. And then we're going to do the less than dash, and this is pushing whatever object gets returned from these functions into that tuple, okay? So we need to call Guardian dot, we want to do encode and sign. And then all we're doing here is passing in our account object that just got created. So this account object is now going into our encode and sign function, and that returns a token and a claims object. And to know that, you can usually just hover right over the function you're doing, and you see that, you know, if there's no errors, you get an OK atom, you get our token back, and then you get the claims object. And then if there is an error, you get an error with an any type. So we want to create a user object every time a new account is created, and it will be associated with our account object. Before we can just call users.createUser, we're going to want to make a small tweak to our user context file. So we want to go ahead and expand the Real Deal API directory and then go to our users.ex context file. And then you'll see here, create user. It uses the user struct, and then it will call the change set with the parameters passed in, and then insert it into the database. We can pass the account object we just created into the create user function instead of piping from the user struct. So what we're going to do is replace the user struct with account. So up here in the parameters being passed in, we're just going to type in account, comma, space, and then let the attributes get passed in. And then we're going to delete the user struct here and type in account. All right. And then we can use the ecto.buildAssociation function. Hit return, and we're going to do the pipe function. And then we can call ecto.build_association. And then we're building an association with our user object. If the relationship is a has one or has many, the ID or primary key is set to the parent struct, and it can automatically build the association. So that is why we're passing in the account, because the account has the has1 in the schema. In the user schema, let's just pull it up, it belongs to. So you already need the account created to build the association. All this does is essentially this build association is inserting the account ID from the account object into our user object automatically. And that's all we have to do for this create user. So save it. And now let's jump back into our account controller and finish this create account function. So now let's put a comma in after our guardian encode and sign. Let's return again, and we'll do another tuple. This time we will do a okay, comma, and then we want to use our user struct, which is user, and then opening curly braces, comma, or equals to our user. And then we want to do the less than symbol dash, and then now we can call our user context file. So users dot create, and we do have to set up some aliases here. A cool little shortcut so you don't have to create a new line for everything that you're importing. We can do a curly brace after this dot and then do a curly brace after. And now we can do comma accounts dot account to have access to the struct. And we can delete this line here. And now let's add our user. So we need the user's context file. And then we're also going to need access to our schema for the struct. So we can do users dot user. And then there we go. And using the curly braces for the aliases are pretty nice. So now when we come down here, this function should be available to us now. So users dot create user. And now we have to pass in our account object and then the parameters, which are just going to be the account parameters. When we save it, it's yelling at us here because we're not going to actually end up using the user object right now. So let's do an underscore there. And then once we use the token, it won't yell at us anymore. But the reason I'm taking the account parameters into the user, we can actually ask for more things in the account sign up. So when we're passing in our request JSON, we can have, the email for the account, the password, and then we could request full name, gender, bio, whatever other options you have. But you can also allow them to be nil and the object will still be created, but with the account ID. So now what we have to do is we need to render our JSON response. And if you see this, we have our con object and we're transforming the status to created, which is fine. And then we're rendering the show.json and passing in account. All right, so we need to pass in our account and a token. We need to open up our account view.ex and make some tweaks there. So if you go down into the Real Deal API web and then expand the views directory, you'll see account underscore view. Let's open that up. And so currently we're calling this show JSON and we're passing an account. And what that does is it just renders one account JSON, which is this object right here. All right, so what we're going to do is just make a new function. So this is going to be our response after you create an account. So we'll just do a def render here and then opening parentheses. And then this is the name that we're going to use that we call from the controller. And we'll just do account underscore token.json. All right, so this kind of tells us that it's our account and a token, right? And then do a comma, and then you need to do a percent symbol, opening curly brace, and now we're passing in an account object, and the variable name will be account2, and then we're also passing in a token object, and the variable name there will be token, and then close those curly braces, close those parentheses, and now do, and then the end. And now to return a JSON, we just need to do a percent symbol, curly sign, and then it'll automatically put the end on there. Okay, and then I'm just going to do a little return in between so we can fill in everything in between now. And we're going to return our account ID, so account.id, comma, and then we're going to return our email, so account.email, comma, And there's no reason to return the hash password. That is something that doesn't have to leave our database. So I'm not going to include that. And now we can just return our token. And that will be our response object now. So now we can go back to the account controller and we can update our response JSON to account underscore token. And then we're going to need to pass in our token as well. So we're going to do a comma here, token, and then pass in our token variable. And now our little yellow line under this, we're not getting yelled at anymore. So we're passing in our account and token. Oops. We also have to just make this an object now. That is all we have to really do. Let's make sure our Docker container is up and running. All right. So mine is running. If it's not, press this play button here. Okay. And then we can just open up our terminal. And you'll have to CD into your project. Mine is in Documents, Develop, BS, and then Real Deal API. And now to spin up our server, we can just do mix phoenix.server. It'll spin it up and run on our local host. Actually, I am getting ahead of us. We need to go into our router and we need to add our endpoint here. Right under our default endpoint that we already created, we can type in our post. So this is a post request. Now you put in like the URL. So after our base, in our case, it's localhost port 4000 /API / then whatever you're doing. So we're going to do a / accounts and then / create. So that's going to be our endpoint. And then you do a comma here and call our account controller. All right. And then comma, you're going to do a colon and then create, because that's the name of our function. And I'm also going to delete this alias that automatically populated. We don't need that because we're already using the Real Deal API web with the router, and all the controllers are already imported from that file. And I don't know why it automatically is throwing it up there. I have to figure that out. All right. So this is the name of the function. So if we go to our controller, it's called create. And then so you just do colon and then the function you want to call. And there we go. So now let's go back to our terminal. Our API is running and it should just automatically reload. We shouldn't actually have to restart it, but I'm going to restart it just to be safe. So mix and then phoenix.server. And now we're running on localhost 4000. How do we hit our endpoint? I'm going to use Hopscotch for hitting our endpoint. You can use Postman or whatever you prefer. And if you just, let's see, open up. So you're going to need to use Chrome or Firefox for Hopscotch. And you have to install their plugin to hit local endpoints. And I'm not going to run through all that. It's super easy. They should give you prompts that you need their plugin and things like that. So go to hopscotch.io and here it is. I already have the plugin installed, so I am good there. And so all you'll need to do is do the plugin. I think you guys can figure out, but let's change this get to a post request. And then we want to call our local host. So we want to do http :// localhost : port 4000, because that's what it's running on, / API, because that's just what our pipeline, we set it up, / API. And then the endpoint we just created, which is accounts / create. All right. And now we just need to create our body, and that content type is an application JSON. And right here, we just have to set up a JSON body. So you're going to need opening curly brace. For this, I actually want to run through this real quick. We are looking for, in our account controller, we're looking for an account object. So we need to create an account, and then we need to have our email, our hash password, full name, gender, and biography inside that account object. So we're looking for an account object before we can do anything else. All right, so we're going to, inside our first curly brace, we're going to do a a quotations, so account within two quotation marks, colon, and then we're creating a new object, so curly braces. And now we can pass in our email, which is in quotations as well, colon, space, and then here we can type in whatever email we want to use to create our first account. I'm going to do client1@realdealapi.com and then close off those quotations and then do a comma. And now more quotations, #_password is a parameter that we need to include for creating an account. If we didn't, we'd get an error back from our change set. So now we can pass in our password. I'm going to say this is a real_password. You guys can do whatever you want here. And now if we wanted to continue like in our account creation process, like since we're creating our user object as well, we can include those parameters too. So we can do full_name, colon, and I'm just going to put, you know what, we'll do Blork Erlang, and then close those quotations. And then we can include gender. And if you don't want to include it, just throw a null in right here because we actually don't require any of these. And then we have biography. And I'm going to do a null here as well. So we have this object created. And now all we have to do is hit send. And we should get, you know, our OK status with a 200 status code. And we should get our account back with, you know, our email and account ID. And then we should get our JSON web token. So with all that being done, let's hit send. Oh, it's yelling at me. Oh, down here, you'll see this interceptor. So this is why you need the plugin. You have to select the browser extension and then whatever version you have installed. So if you have none or proxy, it won't work. You need to select this browser little toggle right there. And now let's go ahead and hit send. And look at that. The email is already taken because I forgot that I tested this before this episode. So that's really cool because we only allow the email to it's a unique constraint. So there's only one allowed at a time. So there is what our error looks like. We get, you know, a list of errors. All right. So I'm going to change this to client 2 now. And so you saw what it looks like if the account already exists. So you can't create a new one. And now let's do client 2. Pass that in. There we go. We get a 201 status. It's created. And we get our email, account ID back, and our JSON web token. So we created our first account and user objects with our create account endpoint, which is really cool. And you also saw the error. So we got an error back stating that the email is already taken. And we have that all set up in our change set and our Postgres migrations because emails must be unique. So that's really neat. We successfully created our first endpoint. This is turning into a real API. If you need help or want to check out the solutions, check out that GitHub link in the description. And if you have more questions or just want to hang out and chat, join my Discord server, backend stuff. That link is in the description as well. If you want to learn how to build scalable, production-ready APIs, hit that subscribe button now. See you next time.